The Second World War was the most deadly, destructive, and consequential war in history. Historians estimate that World War II produced 55 million deaths, or almost 4% of the world's population at the start of 1939. The war ravaged civilians more severely than any previous conflict and served as a backdrop for genocidal killings by Nazi Germany, as well as several other mass slaughters. Although the actual number of deaths attributed to the final solution of the Jewish question may never be known, it is thought in the course of this intentional genocide over 11 million Jews, Gypsies, homosexuals, and disabled people were killed between 1941 and 1945. In addition to those who died in World War II, there were over 20 million people who were displaced by the war, people who had no place to go when the conflict ended. These are not the stories about the Holocaust or those who died in the war. This is a look at what happened to the people who survived the Holocaust, how their strength, spirit, and sheer force of will allowed them not only to survive, but to prosper and succeed despite the atrocities they experienced.
At the end of the war, in April 1945, I was on a death march from the Camp Sachsenhausen going north to the North Sea. And on May the 2nd, the guards disappeared and we were left in the woods 6 kilometers away from the city of Schwerin.
In Bergen-Belsen, very bad. Every day we went out, they told us, today you got killed. Today you'll be killed. After the war, the British come and they start to take the German to throw all Jews from the barracks, dead people. And this was finished.
The Hungarian says, took us in a ravine, deep, and the hills were all the way around us. So we thought they're going to finish us upstairs with machine guns, this. But during the night, there were a barrage of American tanks shooting right over our heads. That was May 2nd, May 1st, May 2nd in the morning. By daylight, we look, there's no more guards.
You didn't see the light, you didn't see the nothing. You're afraid every time, you're afraid they're going to take you away again. They're going to kill you. And I saw people dying. It didn't make a good impression on me. I wish every time I would be dead.
For survivors, the thought of rebuilding their lives was daunting. They had endured unimaginable circumstances surrounded by hunger, sickness, and death. Focusing on anything other than day-to-day survival was almost impossible. Anti-Semitism persisted throughout Europe, causing many to fear returning to their homes. They were liberated, but had not escaped the threat of death and danger.
I want to go home. I was thinking, how far is to go home? And I didn't know. Then we were staying there. And starting, one died, the other died, because we didn't have food enough.
They didn't tell us nothing, they just pushed us into the train. And when we came, then they had like people asking questions. Are you a Polish citizen? Or stuff like that. When you're a Polish citizen, they let you go. When you're not, they didn't let you go.
Thousands of Holocaust survivors were uprooted by the war and eventually migrated to the American occupation zone in Germany. There they were housed in hundreds of refugee centers and displaced persons, or DP camps.
Most of the people, the DP camps, after freedom that was a very difficult time. The first 4 or 5 months, particularly in 2 places. In Bergen-Belsen was one issue because That was the British there. And they didn't want to recognize the Jews as Jews. They wanted to recognize the Jews as Polish Jews, because the issue of Palestine was a big issue. And the second thing is, in Bavaria, where most of the survivors came out of, the Buchenwald, Dachau, and things like that, the American Army, under General Patton, didn't have any sympathy or any sympathy, so times were very difficult.
They took us to Camp Mittenwald, an army base. From there, I spent about 2-3 weeks till they fed us. Some of them got sick, but the ones who didn't cheat to eat fat stuff or drink milk or other stuff, a lot of died from dysentery. Me, I says, I didn't want to liberate to Spain, sit in another camp. So I went down and took a train and started traveling. I wind up in Feldafing, also a DP camp. I spent one night, I says, it's not for me.
And I was with my sister in Bergen-Belsen from 45 till 48. It was a normal life, like a town. We went dancing in where the German was. Everything we took over.
As the Western world pondered what to do with displaced people, the survivors had to figure out where and how to live. Home, as they knew it, no longer existed. Driven by the hope of finding a loved one alive, many made the journey to their former homes and villages only to find them unsafe and in shambles. Some did not return.
You know, we went back to our hometown, and we were there in a Jewish house where he survived. And at night, some gangsters came in or whatever, nationalists, and my aunt jumped out the window and broke a leg. So they took her to the hospital in Krakow. So my mother said, we're never going to go back there. There's no sense you cannot.
Right after the war, a cousin of mine went down to our town to see if anybody survived, if the property's there. They killed him. A few years later, a brother of mine, an older brother, went to the town. He came back in a box.
With nothing more than the realization of their circumstances, survivors started new lives for themselves.
I lived in Bergen-Belsen. In Bergen-Belsen was a community what they start to ask where to go. The first I registered to Israel. Israel didn't want to take me because I was married already and I got pregnant. Then I stayed there in the migration took me over to Montreal. And I start to make a life.
I found out that other fellows working for the American Army, so they took me in there to work. We heard the company's moving out. So our sergeant took the lieutenant to take us to Frankfurt am Main to the American consul. He says, those boys worked almost over a year here. They deserve to go to the United States. They're all young. And the consul heard the young, he says, I could give him affidavits, but who's going to pay the fare? So he had an idea. Right across the street was the Jewish organization, the Hayas. And the way he went in there, I got 7 affidavits, he says. Even their sisters could go to the United States, or the wives from the one who worked for the army. And we went home with, maybe, who knows, within 2 weeks, we got passage to the United States to a port in Bremenhaven. From there, we came to the United States.
They came, they asked us, you want to go to Israel? In fact, we sent away some packages to Israel, but they said it's very bad. In Israel, you have to be in the tanks to sleep, stuff like that. As we decided, we stayed in one place.
I went to to Linz to work in the Bricha. I was working there between Linz and Salzburg and Bad Gastein. So when I got to Linz already, my mother came already there. My mother was there, and she already found my father. So that my father was in a hospital after the war. They picked him up in Mauthausen out of the garbage, and he spent a whole year in an American hospital in Bad Ischl, Geuser. So my mother already found my father, so I joined them.
Survivors of the Holocaust all have one thing in common: memories. Whether shared or unspoken, the suffering they endured impacted their lives and the lives of their future generations.
I don't like to talk about how many people get killed and all that thing. I wanted to explain somebody. The feeling is, how is to live 6 years under a government where you have no rights, anybody can do with you what you want, anytime, without accounting, without jury and judge, When they shoot you, there's nothing around it. But when you live 6 years on a condition like this and you survive, and then you come out and you want to have new children, have a born, that's a big achievement.
Next Generation's promise is to never forget, to keep our parents' memories alive.
We thank them for their survival and strength.
We pledge to keep their legacy alive.
We honor them for their celebration of life and the strength of human spirit they symbolize.